Tyler. Yeah, thank you. And look,
Okay,
I'll
good.
change.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna just do this, and I'm not gonna use the audio, but I mean the visual. I'll just use the audio, but just in case we sneak something in there. I got my name. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
so tell me. So
So I mean, it's interesting what you've said.
Mhm.
I thought, I mean, this is a little tangential, but I think that the answer to your key question is visual learning. So if I forget
Yeah.
about that, just prompt me with visual learning.
Okay, okay.
But one of the things that struck me as you were talking is the difference between these 3D pieces. You know, this thing is could fall on me, or the sky is not where the sky is, or you know, this very 3D experience and a painting. So I'm just curious how or if these abstract paintings strike you in the same way as, say, this boulder that.
Right. So the interesting thing is that I connected with you over the Richard Serra. So I find
Right,
it
exactly.
interesting that he does both, because he is so effective. His sculptures are, I think it's not only the fact that so many of them are enormous and, more like architecture and create this, you go into them. And so you become a part of the experience. And then, so the fact that he does that, and he does have a lot of slanting walls that are often grounded by, gravity and not bolted. So there is a little bit of that fear. So I don't get that same experience from looking at his paintings, but they do create that questioning in your mind of what's happening, what am I looking at, why do I like this when all it is black? Okay, there's texture going on here. There's, as you were saying, it looks like a sphere, but it's flat. So it definitely, I think it probably gets rid of that fear, that little bit of like, but your brain is still going, what's happening? Why do I like it? And so there's that with
Yeah,
abstract paintings.
yeah. But it sounds as though the thing that really moved you was more this 3D stuff.
It does.
Where there's a real so you think about what are we evolutionarily evolved to do, and what do we need to do in evolutionary terms, and that is to understand the physical world. So that's going to be very, very important to us, right? Oh, I could die, or oh, I think this is up and now maybe that's not up, that's down, or that's sideways, or whatever. Anything that is going to disagree with your basic understanding of the physical world is going to hit you hard. And then the understanding, so understanding that, let's say in an Escher.
Yep.
It's again what's happening in this physical world, but you are not part of that. So
Right.
It's 2D. It's different. It's not going to hit you in the same way.
Exactly.
So I would say the thing that's hitting you in this, the reason you're so moved by it is because you feel in danger. You feel the conflict between your expectation, your experience of the world up to that moment in time, and now what you're experiencing. And now you feel that you cannot predict the next moment because here's this gazillion ton thing that looks as though it could fall on you. And just that slightest chance of it possibly falling on you is so incongruent with what you are evolved to be, which is
Exactly.
safe and secure.
You have summed it up perfectly.
So that's what I think is going on there. And that's really, that's a very specific version of
Mm,
abstract art,
definitely, you're right.
right? Because now Escher may bother you, but it's not gonna set your heart rate
Exactly,
going.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is, yes. Okay. So that happens, and that makes so much sense because that confusion, yeah, seems, and
I
that
mean, always think about things in terms of what you're evolved to do. So,
Mhm,
here's an example from a different part of life, but when people start to lose their memory,
mhm,
the one of usually the first thing that happens is they lose dates and times.
mhm.
Oh, what day is it? Oh, it's whatever, 6 months from now or something, or 5 years from now, or 5 years behind us, or whatever. And the reason is because that has zero evolutionary meaning. Your
Oh,
brain doesn't really care about that stuff. You're taught to care about it, but it's put on top of what's really important to the brain.
huh.
No one gives a shit. No one has ever given a shit, whether it's Wednesday or Tuesday. These are new inventions. No
Hmm.
one cares whether it's 4:30 or 5 o'clock.
Hmm.
No one cares about these things. Um, but when you're under a boulder and that feels unsafe, you care about that.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter who the hell you are. You care about that. Um, if, but if you look at an Escher,
Mhm.
you may or may not care about that. That's the veneer.
Yeah.
That's the non-evolved piece. That's the cultural piece. And so some people it's gonna bother, and they're gonna want to understand it, and some people are gonna care less.
I think,
Um,
yeah, that is so interesting because it really,
yeah,
it felt like there's something that is tied to your core humanity. And so that explains it. I mean, that is what it's, it is both primordial in the essence of light and land, but it is primordial in our need to survive. So our evolutionary instincts are being challenged. So then can that work in a way that changes the way you perceive or the way you predict? Or I mean, is it maybe just makes you more comfortable with being uncomfortable? I don't know.
right. So you can change your predictions, and that's the visual learning piece. And so the visual learning piece is that, a good example is mushroom hunting.
Okay.
You go into this forest and you've never found mushrooms before in your life, and you see none. And then you get taught and you start to see them, and then you start to see them everywhere. Um, and so you can teach yourself uh to this is Where's Waldo.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn to figure out anything if
Wow.
you practice. And it's what is it? Is it actually, there are probably at least two things going on. One is, think about recognizing faces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
how do you recognize a face? You go back and we know this. You go back and forth between the eyes, and you dart down to the mouth, and you go back between the eyes, and you dart down to the mouth. And this is what you do. And do you look at the rest of it? You don't foveate on the rest of the face. You
Okay.
get a little bit of a sense. Um, Now, if you grew up with, if you're Jane Goodall's child and you grew up with the baboons or whatever the hell she was, gorillas or chimps, I guess, chimps, then you can do that to a chimp. And now you can tell different chimps from each other
Right.
because you're looking at them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mixture of figuring out the right motor pattern to see the mushroom or the face, and having enough experience to know the subtleties of it.
That's incredible. So does that mean then that that perception is 100% nurture, not nature? Like it's just what's
So the nature nurture thing, don't even go there.
okay.
The nature nurture thing, it's just,
It doesn't
I don't
help
know,
anything.
it's meaningless.
I guess.
Everything's a combo.
Okay.
Everything is a combo. Everything is a combo. The
Okay.
brain is, first of all, I think that nature, I don't even understand the debate, but I think that the debate is that nature is genetics.
Right. Yes.
And we know that genetics isn't enough. I mean, if you don't get enough of this vitamin or that amino acid, it ain't gonna work.
Yep.
Or if you get
Right.
too much of
Okay.
this amino acid, it's gonna be different things. So there is no nature there's no strict genetics anyway.
Okay.
And but the brain, when given the right nutrition, et cetera, blah, 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 typically will insist that you learn certain things.
Hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
It will insist that you learn to ambulate.
Mm-hmm.
Those babies, they're not antsy just to annoy you. They're antsy because they are evolutionarily driven to figure out how to get around. And if they don't have, if they're, I have a friend who uses a wheelchair now. And when she was a kid, she scooched, and a lot of kids scooch.
Mm-hmm.
You'll figure out how to get around with whatever, if you're a conjoined twin, you figure out how to get around, or they figure out how to get around. You're not told how to get around, but you are told to try to get around, and they'll just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be, you're naturally going to learn how to look at faces, the faces that are around you, which is why we're better at telling people apart for the types of faces that we grew up with.
Makes sense.
That we're experienced with.
Yeah.
But you are not evolutionarily constrained to learn how to serve a tennis ball, obviously. So, there's certain things that you have to do that everyone does because we're good mammals. That's all we are, good mammals. And then there are a bunch of things that we can choose to practice that and learn. And so with modern art, or with art in general, the more you look at it, the more discerning you're going to be. I was listening to, I had an interview, and this person said something that I really appreciated, which was, I can't remember what the person's field was, but it was, I don't know, whatever the hell it was. It wasn't film.
Okay.
I think it's something in the sciences or something. And he said, but the most important, the most something course that he took in undergraduate was a film course. Not because he wants to make film, but because it taught him how to watch films. It taught him that there's more than just going to see what happens in the plot. And I think that that's exactly the same thing with art. If you sit there and you slowly look at it and you talk about it with another person, you'll start to see stuff that you wouldn't if you hadn't spent the time.
Absolutely. Yep, that all makes sense. I have to say, I think it's very exciting that you throw out the whole nature nurture thing, because when I was asking it, the what's behind it is like, can we change? Can we evolve? Can we?
100%.
And that is so great. I
So
mean,
there are things you're constrained to learn.
Yeah.
Ambulating, talking, telling faces, discerning faces. And then there are things that you can opt to learn. And art is obviously in the category of you can opt to learn. I have a friend who's really interesting because the first time she ever went to an art museum, when she was in her mid-30s, I took her. And we went to the Art Institute, and right off the hop, her preference was abstract art.
Really?
He really doesn't like representational art.
Hmm.
So, I don't understand particularly how that happens. I usually think of people who like abstract art as being somehow sophisticated and having been exposed to it by somebody and taught some blah blah blah. But this was an immediate reaction of hers, which I find, and I haven't met many. I can't think of another person who I've met that's of that ilk.
I don't think I ever have heard that. That is, I mean, that
Yeah,
is interesting.
yeah.
So, and so you don't know why. It just was, you just saw her.
I mean, we
get
still
drawn
go to
to
art
it.
museums together, and she
Hmm.
really loves color. She loves geometry. She's pretty predictable in what she likes now that I know what she likes. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's more typical to um to like representational art, but I don't know how much of that is experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This experience with this one woman, this one friend of mine, makes me think, well, maybe it's if I didn't grow up seeing all the representational art that I did, which was a ton, would it have been a toss up which one I like better? Maybe. But
I think
I'm not that experiment because
right.
and a lot of people aren't that experiment.
Yeah, so two things. One, I'm talking to a collector at some point soon, and it's all modern, all very abstract. Really, and he grew up with a father who collected French Rococo and like so ornate and so representational. And I cannot wait to ask him if there's some connection that I'm not seeing. I mean, I think he had a conscious decision to want to collect art and want to be his own person. So, there's sort of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was something going on there, whether it's a color thing or some sort of shape thing. And I don't know if he will be conscious of it or not, but you wonder how you could be raised, knowing this very traditional art and then go the total opposite way. But there was this quote that I sent you that I mean, I fully agree with, not that I understand it, but that abstract art frees our brain from the dominance of reality, enabling it to flow within inner states, creating new emotional and cognitive associations, and activate brain states that are otherwise harder to access. And
Yeah, I mean, I can get behind that statement. I mean, basically it's a tabla rasa, or it has tabla rasa elements, let's put it that way.
yeah.
And I would say, so the piece of neurobiology that I think is important to consider in that regard is, let's take the visual system. Okay, but this is true in all the sensory systems. Everything comes in through the eye. The information goes through the layers of the retina, and then there's a ganglion cell, a retinal ganglion cells, that sends the information to the thalamus, and from the thalamus on to the cortex. Now that cell in the thalamus, it's weird because you could easily go from the eye all the way to the cortex. We can make long neurons. Why does it go to the thalamus and stop there, become a new signal, and then go to the cortex? And so if you look at that connection, let's look at that thalamus cells. It gets lots of inputs. About 4% of the inputs it gets come from the eye.
What?
About 50% of the input it gets comes back from the cortex.
Wow.
So in other words, this is a biological instantiation of, you're going to see what I expect you to see.
Wow. That's
And that is the way that we build sensory systems. And you talk about these shortcuts. That's how they work. You don't have to, if I open my eyes and I see something white there, I don't have to do a lot of work to think that's a pillow. I know it's a pillow. I get, let's say I get 5 ganglion cells telling me it's white. Oh, okay. It's 5 a.m. It's otherwise dark. I'm laying on my side. It's a pillow. Now I haven't wasted any energy, or I've wasted minimal energy, and I know exactly what's going on. This is how our sensory systems work all the time. If we had to build it up from every build up the system. So I know that this is a rose because there's an angle here, an angle here, an angle here. If I have to build it up from every edge and every luminance change and every color, it's going to take me way too long.
Amazing.
So I don't.
Right.
I know, and from a very poor, very impoverished information, I guess, and I'm right. I'm right enough of the time
Wow.
that's going to be canonized by evolution. What happens, and that's called, that's basically a perceptual habit. You're not checking that you're right. You've just been so right so many times in the the millions of times before that you're not going to doubt your visual system at this point.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And then now I'm a little bit depressed because now it's sort of like amazing that everybody isn't more closed-minded, because if we're building this data, makes total sense. You obviously have to do that, but then you're basing it on your previous experience, which then means that new experiences are, you're not.
This is the basis of stereotypes. This is 100% the basis of stereotypes.
Exactly.
Stereotypes, that's what the brain wants to do.
Right.
The brain wants a well-behaved world, and a well-behaved world is the world that you already have experienced and you continue to experience. Well-behaved world does not change. So you're breaking against stereotype is uncomfortable and has to be hammered for the brain to say, oh, okay. So I don't know if you've ever seen the video. It's very, I had to see it a couple times before I saw it. There's a video of people, I don't know what, I think they're counting how many times they pass the basketball around. Okay. And then a person in a gorilla suit walks through the whole time and no one sees it. No. I did not see it my first time.
Oh my God.
If you have trouble finding it, it's, gorilla suit, not seeing the gorilla suit, psychology.
Okay.
If you have trouble with finding it, I can find it.
Awesome. Great.
And there he is. There's this gorilla. So our life is filled with that.
So now that is so amazing, because that makes me think that this art really will get you to question, so I'm going back positive again. And it would say that, don't just assume that, and then that's why it's so the way you describe the thalamus and what's going on, it feels like your brain is kind of short-circuiting when you can't understand what you're seeing in this art, and it's like, wait, I expect this, but it's not this, and so it's like that visual intake is not leading to the shortcut answers that you're used to, and so therefore it is really messing with that part of your perception.
So I think about we just recently had because you saw it, the monochrome multitudes at the Smart Museum.
Yeah.
And, you walk into a room and you see a one color canvas.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you look, and it looks completely, okay, that's one color, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yep. But that's one way, that's one door you can take.
Right.
I don't care.
Yep.
You have to stare at it for a while before you start to see something. And I think that's the hurdle that is problematic with abstract art. is
Absolutely.
that you can easily just say, okay, so what?
Hmm. Yeah.
I suppose people could do that with representational art, but that's so foreign from my
Well,
experience.
but I agree with you.
I grew up with it from way too young, so
Right.
it has meaning to me. It always has meaning to me.
Exactly. But like a Mark Rothko, like that's challenging, these color blocks. But I mean, even more
Right.
challenging is the white canvas. But it is really, yeah, you could easily say, I don't care. And I think that the difference between that art and this art, the 3D art, is that
Right.
you do have to
That's
care
right.
because it could fall on you, if you're
Exactly.
so that is really
Exactly.
amazing that they that
I think that's it. I think I agree with that.
oh
It's
cool.
making you care.
Yeah. And so you don't have to like it, but you have to care because you have to ask, what is this? Am I in danger? Am I, what is happening? And then it kind of pulls you in that way and
Right.
creates that experience. So
Right.
yeah. And I definitely think the key is the experience. You don't have to have an experience with abstract paintings necessarily. You can, but these works demand attention.
But I
So
mean, okay, so then just to be provocative,
yeah.
let's say you go out, and I haven't done this because I don't like this kind of thing. Makes me extremely uncomfortable. But let's say you go out on the the top level of the Sears Tower, which is
Yep.
now the something else tower.
Oh yeah.
And it's got this thick acrylic
Mm-hmm.
see-through, so you're looking down and you're looking a lot of feet, yards away at,
Yep.
and that makes me incredibly uncomfortable. And I would not call that art.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
so that's, that I don't know the difference. I don't, because you're putting it into an experience, and I agree with you that the experience of feeling vulnerable to this boulder captures your attention. Well, so does being way too high up and seeing the ground
Yeah,
also captures my attention.
it sure does, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what is the difference then? Because it's, I think there's definitely a different level of fear. It's not when you're standing there and you're afraid of heights and you're starting to sweat. I mean, you're not going to fall, but you're not really 100% like, my husband is also very afraid of that. And I think in one's mind, you think I could actually fall. Like this could just fall out from underneath me. I mean, that's not crazy to think that when putting yourself out on a ledge, so the level like
So
that,
I mean, is it architectural art?
right?
I
Well,
guess
and
the
so a
question
lot of this art,
is art something biological? Is art
mhm.
a thing, or is it just completely a construct? And if it's a, you know,
Richard
everyone
Serra
asks,
would,
what is art?
right, and that is always the question. And Richard Serra would say, because I know that he was very close friends with Frank Gehry, the architect, and they really had it out. I don't even know if they're friends anymore because I think he actually said he was a better artist, but he was saying art has no purpose and architecture has purpose. There is a function to a building. His art, is not, you can't live in it. You can't, there's no shelter. It is just to be experienced. And so there's that distinction, but his art is very architectural in the sense that it's, that it's got, I mean, he has walls in he has these beautiful ellipses. I don't know if you've ever seen them in real life, but,
Well, I will argue the other way, which is that
oh,
Frank Gehry's architecture is very artistic. So I don't,
I
I
mean,
one of my favorite museums is Fondation Louis Vuitton, which
oh,
is Frank Gehry, and the whole thing is a piece of art. But and I would argue that some buildings are, but along the stairwells,
mm-hmm,
he has all of his drawings, and
mm,
they're fucking amazing. Um, so he is an artist, and the building and the building's conception have a very
artistic.
artistic feel to them.
Absolutely. I see that as well. I can't argue for Richard Serra, but I think that he was really, yeah, I'll have to find it and send it to you because he is adamant that he is an artist, that Gary is is, you know, an
Architect.
architect, and that there is a big divide between the two. So, but definitely there is a lot of overlap for us lay people who don't, you know the intricacies of what these guys are arguing about and breaking up friendships over. But I think that, you know, the balcony is a function, like to go out to get the view. But you know, there's a lot of overlap. I just think that there's a lot more fear in that when you're 100 floors off the ground versus you're in, you know, this was in a museum, and I just walked into a room of a museum. And similarly, Heiser has a 16-foot boulder inset into a wall at Dia Beacon Art Foundation and on the Hudson Valley, and it's just the most breathtaking. I mean, they've sort of that foundation specifically it's site specific, so they brought the artists in and say, where do you want to do, where do you want to put it, we're going to make this space for you and it will be here permanently. And so it's very different than a normal museum, and it's like it's almost like a nave of a church. There are skylights coming from above, so this like celestial light is pouring in onto this 16-foot boulder that's inset in steel, like a steel frame in the wall. But if you stand up again right up toward it, it's leaning just a little bit out, and you just sort of look. And the fun thing is not just to experience it, but then to sit there and watch other people walk by and watch them experience it. And some people say, I choose not to care, and they just keep walking, and you know, my head sort of explodes. But then other people, I mean, will lie down at the foot of it, put their feet up against the wall and just look up at it. Or others will mimic, you know, as if they're holding it up in the air. And you know, there's just so many different ways to interact with it. But it definitely, this kind of art definitely pushes people to say, what is art? You know, does Heiser take these boulders from the desert, put them in a wall, you know, and you know, not intervene anymore? And is that, you know, I mean, a lot of people's definition of art is they want to see the painter stroke, you know, with the paintbrush stroking the canvas, and like, you know, they want that much intervention. And so when these artists, you know, and Richard Serra hardly touches the steel as far as I understand, you know, I mean, I think he's involved a bit, but there's a lot of other people helping him manufacture it and that. So there's also
This has been going on for a long time. Yes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, all of middle
The workshop approach has been going on forever.
exactly. So there, you know, it does make you question. There's so many things that go through your mind when you're looking at these things. But what I really am struck by is you have this thought, and then you have these emotions, and you know, your heart I get really excited. Like I saw this one Richard Serra, it was a private commission on this collector's property, and I'm following her property manager in his car, and I'm going around, and we turn the corner and you look up this hill, and there are these huge 15 by 15 foot Corten steel plates embedded into this hill. Like it's as if like a plane exploded and the pieces just went bam into the ground, and they sort of fall their way, they kind of tumble down, and it is so, like, I got really excited, and like I was like, oh my god, they're so beautiful. And it was so much bigger, and that steel transforms and becomes all of these different colors when it's outside. It gets blue and orange and gold, and it's this hard material that looks so beautiful and soft, and it looks painted, and there's just all this. So this is my brain, you know, the visual, I'm seeing it, and I'm like confused, and I'm excited, and the shortcuts aren't working, and you know, and then I'm, you know, I'm having this physiological reaction where, you know, I'm getting really, you know, I'm happy and I'm excited, and it's amazing to me. And the math, like the science that goes into the way he placed those, each plate, like the top uppermost part of the back one is the same height as the one in front of it. And I mean, it's so intentional. And there is so much, agency from him and how it gets done, but it's moving, and it is, and I also think seeing these artists' art in nature is so powerful. You'll see Richard Serra Steel in the middle of a field, and it makes you see the field differently. You would just normally look and see it as, just grass and this and that. And then so there's that too. It's like it really challenges you to rethink what you see. And so again, the neuroscience, like there's just like so much brain stuff going
Well, I
on.
mean, I think it does remind me, just this past summer, my spouse and I went to Karnak, which is in Brittany. And
Okay.
this is a place, this is the oldest of the megalithic
Oh,
structures. So
mm,
way older than obviously the pyramids, way older than Stonehenge, thousands of years older than Stonehenge.
wow.
And they just have these rocks that they got, not from right there, but from far away, that they have standing there. And
Incredible.
people engage with it all in all sorts of ways.
Mm,
Um, and it also reminds me of, I've never seen the pyramids, but
mm,
I had a conversation with an art historian friend of mine who wanted to understand the difference. We were talking about the difference between seeing art in person and seeing it in not in person by
mhm,
some representation. And so, what I think that difference is, and this has come up a lot through the pandemic, I think that difference is the field of view. So when you're looking at the
yeah.
pyramid, it covers this much space on your retina. And when you look at it in person, it covers your entire, you can't get out of it. It's way, so I think it's all about size. And he wanted it to be about feel, which I don't even know what that means. Anyway, so
Interesting. And
um
like seeing the Mona Lisa, uh,
yeah,
it always seems like
yeah.
it's disappointment because it's so small. And you expect that to be grand. So that's kind of the opposite, where
Well,
you,
size can, I mean, I also thought, I see what you're saying. There are also, I remember these little lithographs of who, I can't remember who, but they're tiny. I mean, size can
yeah,
surprise,
yeah,
plus or minus.
definitely. So then one last question, and I love this. I could talk to you forever about this.
But I want to say one
Yeah,
other thing, which is, so why do I hate the mind body thing? Because the
yeah.
whole thing to me is, the whole thing is brain. So there's no heart. The heart is a really stupid piece of muscle. It's valuable, but it's stupid.
Hmm.
It is not making your emotions. Your brain is making your emotions. So, I mean, I understand that it's a metaphor and I understand that it's a shortcut, but in fact, everything is, in my opinion, your brain. That's the only place you experience it. You experience the emotion, and that gets fed out from the outflow of your brain to create this body experience that you then feel by your brain.
Right.
You don't feel, the only reason that that your heart is pounding is because you can feel it pounding.
Right. Right.
So and the only place you feel it pounding is in your brain. So your heart does stuff. I mean, your brain does stuff to your body, and then your brain feels what you've done to your body.
Okay, that
So
makes
it's all brain. It's
okay.
all
So what
brain.
about when you get anesthesia or like, in one place and you don't feel that place? Is your brain involved in that?
No, it's just not getting that input.
Okay, it's just been cut off.
But think about, but by the same token, think about amputation.
Mhm.
So people feel a limb that's not there. You don't
Right.
need to have anything there to feel something.
Right.
So we are not cameras and we are not tape recorders. We're very inaccurate. We have very inaccurate representation of the world. It is a representation that's good enough, again, for to evolve, to survive through evolutionary time. Everything comes back down to evolution, 100%.
Yeah.
So anyway, but the point I wanted to make is that it's not mind and body. It's the emotional end of your experience, brain created, and it's the more, I don't really know a word for it, but we'll use the shortcuts that people use, intellectual or cognitive end of things, the less emotional based pieces of our experience, and they both come from the brain. That's what I don't like about this.
I buy
this
that completely, and I will.
dichotomy.
Yeah, I'll stop saying that because it actually is that like very zen. I mean, it really, it's funny because all of the meditation, and they often use mind body, like that's just sort of a thing, but it's always about like just calm the brain and just stop all of that chatter and all the noise and just, and so it's all brain. I mean,
It's all
all of
brain.
those, yeah, huh, wow.
So, biofeedback is you're making yourself calm by thinking calm thoughts,
Yeah.
so that you won't get your body all worked up.
Right, right.
That's all it is. You cannot control your heart rate. You can only control your it's method acting. It's method acting for the non-actor.
Wow. Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, I've learned so much.
Okay.
So the last
And you
question
had
then
one
is,
more question?
yeah, the amygdala. So that, as far as I understand it, is about fight or flight. And I was reading something where they were saying there was some connection to viewing art and the amygdala in a reward sort of way. I'm very confused about how the amygdala would play a part in any sort of visual art.
The amygdala is I mean, basically, I think we don't know this stuff.
Okay.
And I also am a little bit more of a holist. So, for example, the thing that makes you want to do something again,
Uh-huh.
many people would call that reward. I think reward's a little bit of a cheesy word, but I would call it craving.
Mm.
Evolution doesn't really want you to feel rewarded. You don't sit there and think, oh God, I'm so fucking happy for an hour. What you think about for an hour is, oh God, I want to go back and get, I don't know, more of that.
Yep.
Whatever that is.
Yep.
And evolution wants you to crave. Evolution doesn't particularly want you to feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so craving is something that is not typically thought of to occur in the amygdala. It's something that happens in the ventral striatum, in this area called nucleus accumbens. And nucleus accumbens is a place where you can either crave, or I would say anti-crave. So for example, I like, Werther's candies.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a Werther's candy and I throw up.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't like Werther's candies. It's the job of the accumbens to say, what's the valence that's attached to this experience,
Mm-hmm.
plus or minus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once it's plus or minus, you can send that information to a bunch of places to enact behavior that would either be commensurate with craving it or commensurate with getting the F away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So the amygdala is one of those places, and the amygdala seems to have a particular ability to integrate the social experiences.
Okay.
and make those social experiences things that one seeks or one avoids. So, some of the things that are said about the amygdala are, for example, you can't read emotional expressions.
Right.
Or a person there has no fear and is inappropriate. The same is true of a person with a prefrontal cortex lesion. They'll pee in front of you. They'll just pee themselves and feel nothing bad about that. Okay. So there's lots of places. These are all interconnected areas. Is the amygdala more involved in social functions? Yes. Is it more involved in emotional functions? Yes. But I wouldn't go too much farther than that in exactly what it does. So the final thing I would say about that is that what kind of bothers me about that is that, as though assigning it to a given place in the brain gives that experience more validity. And to me, that's not true. The validity comes from the behavior, comes from the behavior and the experience. If you do this, that has validity in and of itself. All behavior comes from the brain. So yeah, yes, this part might be more involved or less involved, but I've never thought that is the key, the crux of the validity of the phenomenology. I'm actually much more of a phenomenologist than is au courant these days.
Interesting.
Anyway, so that's my little take on it.
Oh, dang.
And I think that a lot of this stuff goes way beyond the evidence. fMRI just tells you blood flow. It does not tell you that the same neurons are being activated or different neurons are being activated or which neurons are being activated or when in a very exacting way they're activated. It doesn't tell you which ones are being inhibited. It doesn't, it's not it's not the end all and be all to me.
Okay, amazing. Well, now, I have two more questions. I don't.
Okay, go for it.
Okay,
go for it.
Why does evolution want us to crave?
Why does it want us to crave?
Yeah.
Because you got to crave. Okay, so to quote my friend Dom Pfaff, Pfaff, why did he get into? And I tell my students this all the time. Why did he get into neurobiology? He wanted to answer the question, why do anything? Why do anything? Why get off the couch? Why move at all? And the answer is you got to go get some food. It turns out we need attachments. We need social interactions, at least for part of our life cycle. And so you need to crave those things. They need to be desirables, or else you'll just be you would be in one place. And the nervous system is probably there to make us move. Plants don't really have nervous systems. Plants don't have nervous systems. Not really. They just don't have nervous systems. Animals do, or most animals do. And the reason they do is because it governs how they move, when and how they move.
So your cravings are so very basic fundamental human needs, but because the word craving often is just, it has
something you want to do again. Something you want to do again.
Anything you want to do again.
Anything you do, you has won the war. Because there's lots of things you could do.
Yeah.
And the thing that you choose to do, the action that you select to make is the action that has won that audition process. I could go to the right, I could go to the left, I could go forward, I could go backwards, but I can not do all four of those things at the same time. I have to choose. So I can only do one of them.
You could choose, and you could choose a very harmful drug that you then continue to crave.
Exactly.
But that craving is not helping you evolutionary in evolution.
Okay, so Well, okay, so the way that we think that works, I just have to
Yeah, yeah.
make sure that my cat is okay. Um, the so the way that that works is, okay, I take heroin, it
Mhm.
feels really, really good. Yum, yum, yum.
Yep,
Next day, I take it again because I crave it. I take
yep.
it again. But then, come here, child. But then by the fifth or 10th or 100th time, I'm taking it not because of the outcome, which super sucks, but
Mhm.
because it's a habit. It is outcome independent.
Ah,
And that's so it's the same thing as what we talked about before, these shortcuts. It's a shortcut.
yeah, okay.
I already realized that this is a good thing to do, and I realized it enough that I have a shortcut to do it.
Hmm.
I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to continue to brush my teeth in the same way that I was taught, even though this new dentist tells me to brush my teeth differently. Okay. Hard habit to break.
Right,
So is heroin. So
right.
is nicotine. I
Mhm,
come home without thinking about it. I take a shower and I light a cigarette.
mhm.
Those are, these are hard habits to break once they're established.
Hmm. The brain is just amazing.
Yeah. So it's taking something that's bad for you. If it started out bad for you, if the first time you took heroin, it felt as though it was the 100th time, which
Mhm.
mostly causes you, I don't know, not a bad experience,
Uh,
then
you
you would
wouldn't,
never have developed the habit.
right. That
If
makes
if it feels bad, then you develop the anti-habit. That's
right,
food poisoning. You
right,
never eat that thing again.
right. Okay.
We are very tied into the effects, and that tells us whether we're gonna, that is these are the votes for whether we're going to select that action in the future.
Right. Makes total sense. Okay. And then, so then my hopefully last question. So I'm very intrigued by phenomenology. I mean, I think that, when I was looking at this art, I'm like, this is what's happening. This is not, this is the senses. I mean, so as I understand it, it's experiencing through senses. Is that how you view phenomenology?
I mean phenomenology in the sense that scientists would use it, which is that you look at what's happened, and it has meaning separate from the mechanisms that made it happen.
Okay.
That's how I mean phenomenology.
And what is with
So phenomenology in science is really looked down upon. You're supposed to find mechanism. How does
that?
that work? How does that work? How does that work? Um, and so a physiologist mechanism is not a molecular biologist mechanism, is not a physicist mechanism, is not so I'm sort of, I find that an option. That's a philosophical approach. It doesn't happen to be my mine. I think that I find, so for example, in my rat work, we found that rats will help other rats. That phenomenon is meaningful. And
Mhm.
then all the various behaviors and the constraints on that phenomenon, I find meaningful, even if I don't know where in the brain, every place in the brain that supports that action.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by phenomenology,
Okay. But I mean,
as opposed to
as opposed to what? Mechanic. Yeah.
mechanism.
Yeah,
Mechanism.
mechanism. Yeah. So I mean, and I was, so there's a book called Art and Phenomenology, and I was, maybe I'm the way I understood it was, sort of there's the Descartes, I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
And phenomenon meant sort of I sense, therefore I am. Like so
Yeah.
it's similar, I sense if there's something important here, and that is all that matters, as opposed to I can process it, I understand it, I
No,
understand
I
it.
think that's right. So I do think that we are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I would have never thought that that would have worked its way into neurobiology, but that is amazing. Well, I think it's incredible. I mean, the more I learn, it's like the brain seems to be perfect for this because it's, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And it seems that with the
Yeah.
brain, there is just so much that we don't know. Is
Yeah.
that, is that a correct statement to say, or do you
Oh
think,
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure,
yeah,
for sure. But it's fun. It's fun. I mean,
it
the
sounds,
brain produces behavior, so behavior is fun, brain is fun, all of it.
it's
Yeah,
amazing. I love you really condensed it down so well in terms of just like, what are we evolved to do? And that if we keep
yeah,
asking that seems to just answer it all. And I think that solves so many of the questions that I wondered about why this art is so effective, because it's really just getting right at that question. And
right, right.
yeah,
Yeah. Evolution. You can never go wrong by going back to evolution.
I love that when there's just like an answer like that. All right.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let me know when an article comes out.
I will, absolutely. I'm just so appreciative.
Yeah.
You really, really, really helped me. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Nice talking to you.
So nice of you. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Okay. Bye.